The Regulation G rule set has recently been announced, and it allows for the use of one restricted legendary Pokemon per team. Today, we are going to jump into things, and we are going to make an early ranking on these restricted Pokemon. And we're going to jump right into things, guys, and we're going to start with Koraidon. Now, Koraidon is a Pokemon I have seen a lot of hype for. It probably belongs in a needs testing category, but I do believe this Pokemon is going to be incredibly strong. I'm going to leave it in A. I've seen a few people put it in S. Personal testing, I don't quite think it's S. I do believe it kind of has some hindrances, like the 4-time Fairy weakness is not fun for it. However, it does have a lot of good things going for it, and I think the primary thing I want to talk about with Koraidon is being that Sun Setter that does not require, or does not have that water weakness. Right? Not that I think Kyogre is going to be one of the best Pokemon in the format as it normally is. Normally you see Kyogre and I slap it in S. I'm not going to slap Kyogre in S tier here. I'm going to spoiler alert. But I do think Kyogre is still going to be around, and being able to set Sun and potentially switch into a Water Spout and not take 50% like the Groudon used to is really, really strong for Koraidon. You also get very good coverage. You get 100-100 fighting move, which does not drop your defenses, whereas close combat would do that. So you get a lot of good things going for you. You've got Flare Blitz, you can go Terra Fire. I think Koraidon is really, really strong. I don't think it's quite S tier, but it's going to be really, really good. Miraidon is going to be something that dominates this format. You are going to have Miraidon answers. Electro Drift in electric terrain just picks up knockouts that it's just absurd. You should not be allowed to pick up these knockouts, and you just pick up knockouts. This is going to be a Pokemon players are going to build around. This is going to be a Pokemon you are going to need answers for. It is quite simply S tier. Terapagos, okay, I'm torn on Terapagos, okay? Because I really don't think it's amazing in a single restricted format. However, so early in the format, I am going to give it A tier. I don't quite think it's that good. And my main concern with it is you're basically committing to all in on Terapagos, right? In order for this thing to fully function, or at least from my understanding of it right now, you need to be terrestrializing it in more like 90% of the time, if not more than that. Now that's fine. In a restricted format, you can kind of play the whole protect the queen kind of game where you just protect your restricted for like 6-7 turns, support it really, really well, and you're going to go off. And Terapagos plays into that really, really well. I just feel like once the meta starts to develop, and as we see players learn and figure out how to deal with Terapagos effectively, it's not going to be an A tier. I feel like it's going to fall off rather hard, but I do still think it's something that you're going to need an answer for, because if you do not have an answer for this Terapagos, it is going to run over you. Mewtwo, guys, everybody loves Mewtwo. All you Gen 1ers in the chat, why is Mewtwo bad, guys? It's just, if 2 Mega Evolutions weren't enough to make Mewtwo good, I don't think Terra is making Mewtwo good either. It's not a horrible mon, so I'm going to leave it in probably bad. You're going to see a couple random teams just be like, haha, yeah, try out my fun Mewtwo team, but I can't see it being amazing. So I'm going to throw it in probably bad. It just, I don't think it competes with some of the other restricteds. That's all I'm going to get at. Lugia, once again, I think Lugia is going to need testing. Now, Lugia is one of those Pokemon that I feel like doesn't do enough. Right? It sits there, it tanks hits really, really well. However, in a format where Calyrex is going to be really, really good, right? You've got Miraidon as well. Two of the Pokemon I am putting in S tier are just absolutely demolishing this Pokemon before they Terra. I just think it needs too much. Yes, it's a good wall. Yes, it walls a lot of things. It does really good versus stuff like the Rillaboom versus the Ogerpon. I'd be curious to see if it can maybe come into something like that. I do, however, think in a single restricted format, it's not enough. I feel like maybe when you have a second restricted and you can justify maybe having a restricted to do something else, like patch other matchups that another restricted might not be able to beat, I feel like you're going to see Lugia maybe have something, especially with Terra, because this thing's defensive stats are actually incredible. And getting maybe a potential better typing, maybe going base like regular old water, maybe switching over to something like a ground to get rid of the Miraidon weakness, right? Things like that I feel like are good in the long run perhaps. But I this thing probably leans towards probably bad, maybe dropping down to just straight up bad in general. But you know what? It's a Lugia. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say it's interesting. Maybe with Terra, it can do something. Ho-Oh, I'm going to put Ho-Oh in B tier. And this is probably along the lines of how these restricted formats play. When you play a restricted format, and I've played 2016 and 2019 now, everybody always hypes up Ho-Oh. Okay, yo, Ho-Oh is awesome. Let's run it. Let's try to run Ho-Oh. It's finally gonna be good this year, and then it's just never good. Okay, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. Say, you know what? It's not horrid. It has an interesting matchups into a decent chunk of the board, I would say. Right? If Sacred Fire burns are never a bad thing. I just don't know if this Pokemon does enough. Like it's just kind of there. I personally don't think it does enough. I think it's going to be a very big, like a matchup fish. You're going to fish for maybe trying to find that Groudon. You might see some sort of results with it. I just don't think it's going to be a meta-defining Pokemon, but I think there might be enough there to justify saying, yeah, Ho-Oh might actually be good. Kyogre, I'm going to also put in B. I'm not going to rank them within the tiers, but Kyogre, in my opinion, is definitely way better than Ho-Oh. And there is a lot of Kyogre hate. This is the only reason it's not an S tier right now. But with the new additions of Miraidon, Raging Bolt, you still have the likes of Rillaboom. Don't forget about Ogerpon now with the Water Absorb as well. I think there's a lot of tools, and a lot of tools that aren't relying on your restricted to help beat Kyogre. Right? And just simply, let's take a look at Raging Bolt, Rillaboom, Ogerpon. There's a lot of tools that deal with Kyogre that don't take up your restricted slot. So yes, I can now run a restricted that's weak to Kyogre, pair it with an Ogerpon, and that's an Ogerpon, and that's a Kyogre matchup, right? It's still going to be good because Water Spout, go Burr, Terra Water, Water Spout in Rain, really, really strong. Maybe go Terra Grass, get a little bit more of a defensive typing. Still really, really good. I think it's a good piece. It always has been and probably always will be a good piece. But with the amount of hate that there is towards Kyogre in this format, I don't think it's quite there. Groudon, I'm also going to put in B. I think it's very, very strong, especially with the addition of Clear Amulet. I'm very, very curious to see how Groudon teams evolve, because Groudon actually has a pretty good matchup spread into most of the metagame right now, and I feel like with minimal ground types, Miraidon is going to be running rampant. If you can get a really good Groudon team and patch its weaknesses properly, maybe some sort of like Groudon balance, I think Groudon balance could definitely be really, really strong. You also have the ability to set Sun, and setting Sun to boost your Photosynthesis Pokemon besides you, whether that be a Fluttermane, whether that be a Raging Bolt, or etc., whatever you want to look into beside Groudon there. I think Groudon being a ground type alone, having really, really good stats. But once again, I just don't know if it's quite enough to say that it's going to be A tier. Yeah, it might very well be A tier. I'm very tempted to actually change my mind because I do think it has a very good matchup spread. And because of that, I actually am going to change my mind. I am going to throw it into A tier. Rayquaza, I'm going to put Rayquaza in needs testing. It's probably just bad. Okay, I'm going to be honest. It is probably just bad, but I am going to put it in needs testing. You can do cool things maybe besides Shenpao, like kind of like a knockoff Dragonite. But at that point, why are you not just running Dragonite? Right? Run Dragonite, run Shenpao, and then have a different restricted. Right? Like, okay, it's cool that you can do the same thing as Dragonite. Just be a Dragonite, and then you have your restricted slot open. That's the way I look at it. I mean, I could be very, very wrong. But I just don't think it's enough. I'm going to leave it in needs testing because I feel like maybe there's a spot there, like especially if weather becomes super, super dominant. Maybe airlock is actually a decent ability. I can't see it. It's going to leave it in needs testing because I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt so I don't get absolutely yelled at by all the Rayquaza fans. Giratina, sorry, excuse me. This is a Dialga Origin. Dialga Origin, it's definitely going to be, I'm going to put it in, okay. I'm gonna leave it in needs testing. This is like my cop-out answer, okay? This is my cop-out line. And it's basically when I don't know enough about a Pokemon to really justify ranking it here. I know enough about it in a sense that it's still got that Steel Dragon typing, which is never a bad thing. My one problem with Dialga, and is my main problem with Dialga normally, it just doesn't justify taking my restricted slot, in my opinion. Right? And maybe it's really, really good. Right, so I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to leave it in needs testing. It just, to me, doesn't feel like it does enough as a single restricted Pokemon. Once again, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other options that I've already ranked higher than it. I just don't think it does enough as a single restricted to justify using it. I think if this format were to be double restricted, which I'm sure we will get eventually, I think both of the Dialgas probably see a little bit more usage just because it's that mix-up restricted, you know? You have a decent chunk of matchups. You're not justifying using Dialga over something else. You can use Dialga and something else. And I think because of that, that's where Dialga really shines. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt for single restricted though. And I think there's a chance for it to shine somewhere in the meta. I just don't know where it is. Okay. The Palkia origin form, in my opinion, is just worse than regular Palkia. From my understanding, it is faster than regular Palkia, and that's about it. I mean, I could be wrong. If I have that wrong, I do apologize, but that's from what my understanding that I've seen. Or like maybe you're like 10 base points slower. But whatever it is, I don't think it's enough to justify not running Palkia. And Palkia, once again, it misses moves way too often. It doesn't have reliable options that are reliable enough to actually take things down. So I'm going to leave it in needs testing. There's a format. Everything else up here just seems a little bit, has that extra edge above Palkia. Now, granted, could Palkia sneak in? This is what I like about early, like this is literally day 2 after the format's been announced, right? This is what I like about early rankings, is that I could very much so just be wrong, right? These are my early thoughts. If I'm wrong, we get to poke fun of it later. I'm sure there'll be another tier list as we get closer to the actual official release of Regulation G. But right now, it's going to go in needs testing. I think I don't know enough about it right now in the format. But generally speaking, it just never hits its moves. It just doesn't do enough. And I'm thinking we're going to see much of the same with it once again. Once again, both Giratinas, I'm actually going to put in bad. Now, keep in mind, in this is bad category, I think there is a chance. Actually, I'll put it in probably bad. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, right? But I just don't think it does enough. Once again, Giratina is a mon known for its that defensive those defensive stats, right? And having those defensive stats is really, really strong, but I just don't see a spot where having this Pokemon actually benefits your team that's outside of her, like, to justify the restricted slot. Once again, maybe in a 2 restricted format, you can justify using it in addition with another restricted, but in a solo restricted format, justifying Giratina as your restricted just doesn't feel correct to me. It just doesn't, I don't see where that actually benefits things. So I'm going to leave it down here. Now, I'm going to give Reshiram the benefit of the doubt. I'm putting it in B. I haven't seen this thing yet. I haven't personally tested it, but it's one of those Pokemon that I think actually has a chance. You've got the ability that basically acts as Mold Breaker, which is actually really, really strong, right? You also get the ability to just kind of hit things, right? You don't hit a lot of things, but you hit enough things to a spot where, you know, you're hitting the Rillabooms. You're a fire type that doesn't really necessarily lose to Ogerpon Water, right? You just have a lot of decent matchups, some natural bulk, some good stats as well. It just feels like it's a Pokemon that should be seeing usage, and I think B tier makes a lot of sense for it. You get the ability to Terra now as well. Maybe you can go like Terra Flying to get out of the ground weakness if you're going up against a lot of Groudons, right? I think there's a lot of potential, especially with the ability to Terra for Reshiram. I think it's a decent option. Now, Zekrom. Now, I don't think Zekrom is bad, okay? Don't get me wrong. I do not think Zekrom is bad by any means. However, in a format where Miraidon exists, if you are not using Miraidon and you choose Zekrom, I feel like you're doing something wrong. Now, granted, maybe there's specific niches where you want that slot to be physical, right? And you want to take advantage of maybe a clear amulet on a Zekrom, right? I just think 99% of the time it's outclassed by Miraidon. If you're using Zekrom other than to have fun, because like, go ahead, have fun, use Zekrom, right? I'm not going to stop you, right? But like, if you're trying to build a serious team and you're choosing Zekrom over Miraidon, I think you are doing something wrong. So I'm going to leave Zekrom in probably bad, not because it is bad, but it's because it is severely outclassed by Miraidon. Kyurem White, I am very, very intrigued by this Pokemon, okay? You get the Snow Boost now to boost your defensive stats. You get to potentially spam Blizzards if you maybe want to run like a Tornadus with Snowscape. Not only does that stop both opposing weathers, it gives you good weather control. It gives you the ability to spam Blizzard. It gives you Tailwind support beside this thing. I think there's chances. I think there's openings for Kyurem White to be really, really good in this format. And you know what? I'm very curious to see how it actually evolves, because I think Snow is something that normally, you don't see in restricted formats. In the restricted formats, it's all about Sun, it's all about Rain, right? Mainly because Kyogre, Groudon. But I think because of the Snow boost to defense, I think there is an outside shot for Snow to actually be seen in this format. And I'd be very curious to see if Kyurem White can take advantage. I'm going to leave it in B for now. I'm not super sold on it, but I do think I'm very intrigued to try it out, and I do think it's going to be seen. Kyurem Black, I'm torn. I don't know if I'm supposed to go in needs testing or if I'm supposed to go in probably bad. I feel like I'm really supposed to go in needs testing, just because I don't want to put this thing immediately into trash. It really should be into trash. I don't think Kyurem Black really does a lot. Its typing isn't bad. I just don't see it doing things. You do get access to something like a Baxcalibur with the loaded dice, Icicle Spear, Dragon Dance, Scale Shot kind of thing. But at that point, just run by Baxcalibur and save your restricted slot. Especially in a format where I think Will-O-Wisp is going to be very, very prominent. Run a Pokemon with Baxcalibur with Thermal Exchange that you can't get burnt on, right? Rather than Kyurem Black. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe with Terra Fire, this thing actually is an absolute beast. So I'm going to leave it into needs testing. But I don't think it's very good. I think it should probably not be used too often. But, hey, maybe it's good. Kyurem White. Regular Kyurem. Probably bad. I've never seen this thing do anything. So it's going in probably bad. I would put it in is bad. But I want to save this category for, Cosmog and Cosmo M. There's not a lot to say there, guys. They get 2 attacks each. They don't really have the stats to back anything up. Don't use them as a single restricted, okay? They're just not good. Solgaleo, and I know I'm gonna catch hate because I know for whatever reason everybody loves Solgaleo. I don't know why. I'm gonna put it in needs testing. I have never been a fan of Solgaleo. Okay, in every format, I trash this thing consistently. So maybe I'm a little biased here. I'm probably a little biased here. I even have a slogan where I go, friends don't let friends use Solgaleo. But, we're going to leave it in needs testing. Maybe there's an opening for it. But I don't think there's that much going for it right now. Right? Steel Psychic, not a horrible typing. But it's not enough versus what I think are the top tier Pokemon. You got both the Calyrex probably being top tier. Yes, you probably have a decent matchup versus the Calyrex Ice, but the Calyrex Ghost you don't want to see. You probably get outclassed by Miraidon. It's probably doing a rather large chunk to you with Electro Drift as well, right? You don't do enough to Terapagos, right? You have Groudon, which hits you really, really hard, and I feel like maybe you can Terra out of that. But if you have to Terra out of things more often than not out of the top Pokemon in the format, it just doesn't feel like you have enough of a matchup spread. I could be wrong. I'll leave it in needs testing. I don't think Solgaleo is good, but clear amulet or clear body or the ability, whatever it is, 'cause it's not clear body, but whatever its ability is, that means you can't, which is basically clear body. It might have something. It's not bad. Lunala, I'm gonna put Lunala. I don't know if Lunala is high B tier or low A. I'm gonna go low A for now. Depending on how the rest of the tier list shapes up, I might drop it again. Just because Calyrex Shadow is so good that I don't know where Lunala fits. But you also get the likes of stuff like Wide Guard. You get the ability with Lunala now to actually, similar to the Calyrex, to Terra out of weaknesses. And I think that's really, really strong. One of the biggest drawbacks of Lunala was that 4 times Ghost Week, was that 4 times Dark Week. And being able to just remove those with a Terrestrialization feels really, really strong to me. And you hit a lot of things hard back, right? You go back, you tear out of the Calyrex stuff, and then you hit the Calyrex back with a Moongeist Beam, right? Maybe you go Psyshock or Expanding Force, right? I don't know if you get Expanding Force, but if you maybe go Psyshock, maybe you go, right, and you hit those Amoonguses that are part of the format now, right? And it just feels like it's a mon that now with the ability to Terra really takes advantage of that, and I'm very curious to see how it actually slots into the meta, because I can guarantee you it's going to slot into the meta. It's going to be a decent Pokemon. Duskmane, I'm going to leave. It's the best. I'm going to leave it in needs testing, but it's probably not good. I don't think Dawn Wings is very good either. I'm going to speed up on these two guys. I've never been a really big fan of these two Necrozma forms. I don't think they're horrible by any means. You guys can go ahead and prove me wrong on these two Pokemon. Maybe they are really, really good. I just don't think it's enough to justify as a single restricted. I think there's other single restricteds that are just better. I will actually give them both needs testing. I know it seems like a cop-out format, and that's just because it is a cop-out category. But it's also because I'm not... It's kind of like that in-between, It's like... It's probably bad, but it also, with the right pilot, if the format develops properly and someone can find a way to actually like crack the code sort of thing with these Pokemon, I think they do have potential to move up into B or A. So I think they do need a little bit more testing. Feels a little counterintuitive as I am ranking them, so it kind of feels like a cop out, but it is what it is. Necrozma, guys, I'm just putting it in bad. It's been bad. It's not good. Zacian, I don't know if it's an A tier anymore. I'm going to leave it an A. It's most certainly not S. It was nerfed a little bit. It lost 20 base attack stat, and Intrepid Sword only activates on the first time it's hitting the field. So if you switch it out and bring it back in, you no longer get the attack boost. I'm not sold on Zacian. I do think it's still a really, really strong option. The Fairy Steel typing is really, really good. What I'd be more curious about with Zacian is actually its non-sword form. And that's because now I get the access to an item. And I think having access to an item is really, really strong for Zacian. You still get Intrepid Sword. Maybe you go something like Clear Amulet so you can't get Intimidate cycled down by Incineroar, that we know is once again going to be everywhere in this format. Incineroar is very, very strong in this format. It matches up really well into a lot of things. So being able to maybe ignore that and utilize Terra to take advantage of like a Steel Fairy typing, like maybe you go Fairy but Terra into Steel, sort of like that when you need to. I'm very curious to see if that actually works. I wonder if it is better than the actual Zacian, because I think there's opportunities for that to be utilized right here. Zamazenta, I'm going to give it B. I don't think it deserves anything higher than that. It's probably not bad. You get Body Press now, which is actually kind of decent for it, right? You get a decent Steel move. You get Body Press. Like I said, you get Wide Guard as well. And a lot of things in this format are spread options. Precipice Blades, Astral Barrage, Water Spout, Origin Pulse, right? You've got a lot of spread options in this format, and having the option to just shut those down, even the Terrapagos move once it Terras, is spread as well. So being able to just shut everything down and limit attacking options from your opponent seems really, really strong. Don't think it's high enough to be slotted into A tier by any means, but it's definitely good enough that you're going to see enough of them around that I would be ready for it. I don't know anything about this one. It's probably bad. It might be needing testing, but I think the base form of Zamazenta just isn't there. Eternatus. Okay, here's the thing. Everybody at the beginning of the format is like, Eternatus stalls the whole format out. Let's do it. Let's stall the whole format. You know, we can Terra now. We have ridiculous defensive stats. Poison coverage is inherently really, really strong. And then it just kind of amounts to not a whole lot. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be one of those matchup check Pokemon similar to Ho-Oh, where if you can fish for the right matchups and you can kind of get them in a regional run, you're probably going to make day 2 just because of the nature of the Pokemon. I just don't think it's amazing. So we're going to leave it in needs testing. Someone's going to crack the code, I'm sure, and we're going to have this Eternatus team that no one really wants to go up against. But until that day, I'm going to leave it in needs testing. Base form Calyrex is just bad. Calyrex Shadow is S. Calyrex Ice is S tier as well. Calyrex, we'll go Calyrex Shadow first. Calyrex Shadow, it's going to be one of the best Pokemon in the format. It is going to be one of the highest used Pokemon in the format. Astral Barrage is a disgusting move coming off of a base 160 special attack stat, I believe, which is just ridiculously strong. And you're ridiculously fast as well. You outpace the Flutters, you outpace the Miraidons. Just getting these Astral Barrages off, getting one knockout, and then being able to Astral Barrage and just start getting that Grim Neigh up because of the ability. It's just so good. You get special attack boost when you kill a Pokemon. It just steamrolls so fast. If you're not careful, you're gonna get steamrolled. Now, why it's another tier. Another reason I love it in S is because you can Terra. Once again, similar to that Lunala, right? You just get to Terra out of those weaknesses. Now, when they built this mon, they were like, oh, 100 HP and 80 defense. It's not super bulky, but it's enough of a bulk. But like, you pair that into a dark type attack, or you hit that with a ghost type attack, and it's falling. Now, base 100 and base 80 in defense, HP and defense is not bad when you can Terra out of your 4x weaknesses. Tearing out of your 4x weaknesses makes Calyrex incredible. Like 180, I'm not going to sit here and call it like the best bulk in the world, but I am going to sit here and say it's very serviceable when you're able to remove 4x weaknesses. So this Pokemon is going to be a massive threat, and you're going to have to be prepared to play against it. Same with the opposite side of things. Calyrex Ice Rider is the epitome of bulk, and it comes with a 165 attack stat as well, with a spread Glacial Lance, right? It just feels really, really strong. You are going to see this Pokemon. The only reason it's not like one of the top S tiers is because you need to find a way to get Trick Room up with it. Now, is that necessarily a hard thing to do? Probably not. I mean, we've been getting Trick Room up, and Trick Room teams have been doing well for years, so it's still going to be an S tier. It's that one extra setup, though, that probably leaves it at the bottom of S tier. However, a really strong Calyrex team is going to do really, really well, right? And a lot of these Pokemon, once again, Calyrex probably only getting better when there's 2 restricteds. Both of them. Miraidon probably only getting better when there's 2 restricteds, right? I feel like Ho-Oh and Reshiram I could easily drop down to needs testing because once again, are they enough to justify using over some of the above slots here? I'm going to go ahead and say probably not. But once again, I think they're good enough that maybe if you can find the right team for them, they're pretty strong. Whereas needs testing is one of those ones where it's like, it definitely is a very, very minuscule niche somewhere. I just don't know where that is. Whereas these with Ho-Oh and Reshiram, I can see them like being really strong matchups. It's like Reshiram with the right Terra just probably beats Groudon consistently, right? And I believe it gets. I think you get Shadow Ball still. Don't quote me on that because then it's really fun. You can put pressure down onto like the Lunalas and the Calyrexes. You can kind of force them off the field, right? I think there's a lot of good tools here with the Reshiram just because of the coverage you get and your general base typing. I feel like there's an opportunity for it to be seen here. Other than that, guys, that's kind of where I'm thinking. This is where I'm thinking initially on the tier list. I will do another tier list closer to where I remove the needs testing format. But given the fact that we're only 2 days into the format, I kind of wanted to keep this category where I don't think these Pokemon are amazing, but I do think there's a chance as the meta kind of develops to see where they slot in. But with that, guys, I think I've kind of rambled on for far too long now. I don't know how these tier list videos always end up being like 25 minutes. I really genuinely do not understand that. But if you guys do enjoy this type of content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.